Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again. We are now having a special moment here in our program, and that is we're going to speak to an amazing individual. He is a correspondent or a reporter for the New York Post since 2007. We'd like to welcome to our program today Reuven Fenton. He has earned national recognition for his exclusive reporting on many myriads of national stories. In fact, Reuven, I hope later on in our program we'll share with us some of your recent trips to Israel as you cover the important stories of anti-Semitism and what you saw there. And today, we welcome you to share with us about your debut novel that you've written called Goyhood. And Reuven, please, we welcome you. Thank you for joining us and sharing with us this time. And you are a graduate of Yeshiva University and Columbia University School of Journalism. And please share with us the story of the novel that I know that is described by the Associated Press as a big-hearted novel about the enduring importance of faith and family. And as I've seen in the notes, a lot of fun and humor you put into the story as well. So welcome, Reuven, and give us a little bit of an overview of this beautiful novel.
Well, first of all, thank you, Rabbi, for having me. It's a real privilege and a real honor. Thank you so much. This novel has just been a journey in so many ways. Writing it and the story itself is a journey. It's about two brothers. The core of the novel, it's a story of two twin brothers who couldn't be more different, who take to the road after discovering that something amazing, which is that all their lives they believed they were Jewish. One of the brothers took on a very almost extreme Orthodox life in the yeshiva world in Brooklyn, and then in their early 40s they discover that in fact they aren't actually Jews after all. There was a mistake, and that's all. There was kind of a convoluted mistake involving a falsehood that their mother told them about their origins. And due to this crisis, they take to the road on a sort of journey of self-exploration to sort of come to terms with this existential crisis they're dealing with. Of course, both one brother's very religious and the other one is not at all. And so they handle it in different ways and they kind of play off each other. And over the course of the story, they really change as they come to certain realizations and understandings, really about the meaning of faith and about God and about really like the purpose of life and what we're here to do. I draw on certain, Hasidic concepts, particularly in the Chabad world, having to do with the value of participating in the world. And without giving too much of the plot away, my protagonist is a guy named Meir, discovers that essentially, he's lived his whole life cloistered in a yeshiva, not his whole life, but his whole adult life, cloistered in this yeshiva, learning Torah all day, every day, but not really being involved with his community or with the world at large. And he kind of discovers that by the end of the story, again, no spoilers, that he understands the value of being involved with the world and actually doing things for others and as opposed to just for himself. Go ahead.
This is Reuven is fascinating. I think the aspect that also jumps out in the story is that his mother is the one who first tells him they're Jewish, and that inspires him to live it the way you've expressed it. And then the what really inspired the mother or got it going was she meets up with a rabbi from Brooklyn known as Rabbi Kugel, very appropriate. I guess the best kugel is made in Brooklyn. But this rabbi is from Brooklyn, and she at that point tells them they're Jewish, and that passes on. But sadly, in the story as it goes on, it turns out that the mother uh, commits suicide, and then in that suicide note spills the beans
Mm-hmm.
from the kugel over the cholent. But why what does it ever come out why she ever misled her son or
So
son?
it comes out through innuendo. It's not directly stated, but essentially the reader is led to sort of understand that, this is a damaged woman. Her childhood, which I don't really get. I just kind of allude to certain childhood traumas and a difficulty in life that's led to a sort of chaotic personality. This is not a responsible woman. This is an impulsive sort of she does not have it all together. Okay. And that's just clear from her actions in the story. And then one day, this rabbi introduces himself to her, and among another a number of things that impress her about him, on top of his civility, and he's all put together. He's got a suit on, and he just strikes her as this special person somehow. They live in the deep south, and the types of people she normally associates with she's often kind of mingling with a lot of unsavory characters. So here comes along this young, respectful rabbi from Brooklyn who won't even shake her hand. Out of Shomer Nagia, the
Honesty.
modesty, like, and she's so impressed by this guy who won't shake her hand. And then she develops a relationship with the rabbi and his wife, and actually ends up working for him as like kind of a secretary at their shul. And so ultimately the reason she gets involved with them in the first place is just because this Jewish couple gives her something that she's never had in her entire life, which is a sense of unconditional love and support. And so right away she's sensing that, she decides, oh yeah, we're Jewish, like, because she kind of wants to be a part of her impulse, because she gets very impulsive, is to seize on becoming part of that world, even though she's actually not really being honest about actually being Jewish.
So she commits suicide, and in
Uh-huh.
that note, the brothers find out when the mayor, or you call Marty, Mr. Marty, comes back from Brooklyn for the funeral, and he's thinking about what he has to say about his mother's funeral, and he ends up finding this note that the rabbi Kugel gives it to him.
Hmm.
Um, I felt that, you know, then of course when he finds out he's not Jewish, and he's already at some point he's already married, right? He's already married to a Sarah, and
Hmm.
the whole question about how, should he, shouldn't he say, and then there's a delay. The rabbi says you can have to convert now. I want you to know, Reuven, as a rabbi, Chabad rabbi here in Long Island, I faced these stories in real life where
Hmm.
children have found out later in life they were either like adopted children, uh, or maybe now becomes surrogate mother issues, and many issues now where people have found out later in life, maybe on the way to getting married, that they're not really Jewish and they've spent time. So, did this story just is it based on some experience you've seen around you, or is it just from your wonderful imagination?
I appreciate the flattery. This actually was purely from my imagination. I wasn't aware, although I'm not really surprised. It had occurred to me that this might happen. It probably had happened. But really, this idea just came from sort of a what if notion that struck me one day. Wouldn't it be wild? Wouldn't it be interesting if this happened to somebody, particularly somebody who was like so embedded in the yeshiva world, and in this particular type of yeshiva world where the whole life revolves around Torah study. That he's a certain type of Jew that really emphasizes just day and night, all day, every day Torah study. What would happen if somebody like that, who's almost just the epitome of that type of Jew,
Correct.
uh, if with and the crisis that would ensue, and then only afterwards, a couple people, you and one or two other people mentioned to me that this in fact does happen in real life, which is fascinating in its own right, because I actually I've never met one of these people, but I'd be intrigued to hear, like, I mean, I think it really maybe just comes down to personality. I mean, maybe some. I asked my brother, who's a part of the Chabad world, my younger brother, like, what would you do if this happened to you? And he was like, well, honestly, I think I would just deal with it, like, just get a conversion and just move on, more or less, because you know he I I think that like some people, they wouldn't want to necessarily, spend too much time mulling over the existential questions of faith and so forth, and more or less just place trust in God that, God intended this to happen for whatever reason, and I'm going to let it go. I'm going to just quickly convert and let it go. But I decided to have my character be more, to make it more of a crisis for him so that I could explore these questions of faith and so forth.
I found it. Uh, I guess I had a pet peeve with the rabbi because I felt that he is the one who kind of got this going.
Hmm.
He he's the one who says the conversion can happen in 7 days. Was it because he has to pretend he has the shiva? Is that the reason for the 7 days? Or like there's a delay, but I don't. And then the story goes on again without giving the whole story. They go on this trip, but I felt that the rabbi should have had him close by and helped initiate the relationship with his wife and,
Hmm.
and move it forward. Like somehow he's there, he delivers the note, and Fatik, and the guy's allowed to go off on his own, and it creates all these issues. His wife calls up, "How you doing?" She finds out that he's on his trip and he's not even dressed anymore like this yeshiva
Yeah.
boy, and it goes runs against the whole relationship. Why wouldn't the rabbi? I would expect it's just like in my experience, the rabbi has to step in and do do a better job in helping this young man.
Right. And I like your perspective because you're coming at it like from the standpoint of somebody like what would I do? And I assume that's what you would do, right? So, in a novel, it's like like the whole there's the fuel of a novel is tension. They say, you got to keep it tense. You got to keep the conflict going.
Right.
And my conflict is turning my character into what you call a fish out of water. I want my character to get out there and to be stunned by all that he's experiencing because I'm putting him out there on the road in this fish out of water situation. So for the purposes of my narrative, I needed him to get out of there and to go and to move the story along that way by having him experience all this stuff. And so I really kind of harped on the theme of basically having the rabbi Kogel uh, ultimately endorse this idea that, like, okay, why not, like you're saying, you as what you would do if you were the rabbi, you'd keep him close and help him along. But his approach for again fictional rabbi is like, why not take, the time you have and actually try to wrap your head around this. I mean, you have an opportunity here. You have, why not seize it as an opportunity to actually, I don't know, spend some time think. My character Mayor, he says, if it were up to me, I'd be put into a self-induced coma for the week. That's what he'd really like. Like, put me in a coma until I can convert. But Rabbi Kokel's like, no, okay, get out there and think.
It feels to me also that if a person's been living a life in yeshiva like that, you're saying this guy's really intense, and he's even made the commitment of getting married, and there's also
Hmm.
tensions there. If I'm
Yes.
quoting you that they haven't had children for a while, and
Uh-huh.
and she's not open to the fertility perspectives of going, and she says to him, keep your head in the Gemara, in the
Yeah.
Talmud, and don't bother me with these things. My question is, it seemed that his whole commitment to learning and the depth of his was missing. That he even had a question. It was in 1 second, 1 minute he's a yeshiva boy. He's going back for his mother's funeral, and very quickly his other brother David can take him out on a Wild West kind of a trip that you
Hmm.
call what do you call it, an Exodus style kind of trip. And in 1 second he gives up his yarmulke, gives up. I mean, my question was, how committed was he to begin with that in 1 second it was out? And
Well,
you know,
yeah. Well, I so there's a lot of different elements. There's a few different elements here going on. I mean, first of all, I mean, his brother David kind of traps him. He's like, listen, I got the money, and
mm,
you're coming with me on this trip. I mean, his brother basically all but forces him to go on the trip with him, and he's very reluctant. That for the first 100 pages of that trip, he's hemming and hawing, and he doesn't want to come along. But also, I mean, keep in mind, he's not a Jew, he's not Jewish. He he's the type of person who he doesn't know what to make of this this change in his life. I mean, he's like, I'm not a Jew. So like certain things he will not do, like he will not eat non-kosher as a non-Jew. But his whole is from his point of view, it's as if he's been picked up off the ground, thrown as high into the air as someone could throw like a rubber ball, and he just hits the ground. I mean, his whole life, as far as he's concerned, has been completely turned upside down. And plus, he's extremely anxious about, I don't want to give it away again too much about the dynamic between him and his wife, but that whole dynamic, he doesn't know what to do about, because she actually is pulling the strings a lot in a in a in an indirect way. She is pulling the strings as far as the decisions that he needs to make, because she's a very, very difficult woman.
She's had her
In the
own
story.
baggage. She's had her own baggage as well.
Yeah, she has a great deal of baggage, and some of which she doesn't understand. I mean, because he's been living under a rock for so many years, but she has issues, and when all he knows is she's very fragile, very delicate. He has to figure out how he's going to let this. He has to figure out how he's going to break this news to her without her having a complete breakdown. And so all these things are just circling around his head. And so the decisions that he makes in the story aren't the decisions that he would normally make. He didn't have to make any decisions. I mean, keep in mind, for the past 4 years, he hasn't even left his tiny little sliver of neighborhood Kensington, which I think is about a quarter mile. He hasn't, for 4 years, he hasn't even stepped outside the neighborhood of Kensington, Brooklyn. So, like, this is not a guy who's equipped to make any kind of big decisions right now. And so, his brother's this force of nature. You're coming with me. This is going to happen. And then Rabbi Kogels kind of gets in on it. Yeah, I think this is a good idea. So the mayor's like, he's like, he's being pulled directions that he has no control over, in a sense.
There's another part of this as well, that because there was no conversion, no of any kind, uh,
Hmm.
it didn't have that total commitment. And in other words, a proper conversion means that the person assumes a nobility that goes back to Mount Sinai.
Right.
And part of that process is to give that person a soul that all the
Mhm.
Jewish people received at Mount Sinai. So a conversion means a commitment to that. And without that soul, that neshama that we speak about,
Mhm.
it could allow for this. And it was, therefore, his whole learning and his whole commitment was somewhat superficial, because that was missing in his life. Uh,
Yeah.
and that would. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're speaking to Reuven Fenton, who's written a novel called Goyhood. It's a brilliant debut about a devotedly Orthodox Jewish man who discovers in middle age that he's not, in fact, Jewish. And he embarks on a remarkable road trip to come to grips with his fate. So, Reuven, how did you come to the name Goyhood,
Hmm.
this novel?
So, it's not easy naming, giving your novel a name. And I had a list of possible names. They would come to me, and none of them seemed quite right. At one point, I was just thinking of calling it Goy, but that felt a little inaccurate somehow. It didn't seem like the right name. And then at one point in the book, he's in a situation, or he's in a total fish out of water situation. He feels totally unmoored. He's drifting. He's like, this is not normal. This is not my idea of normal. This is Goyhood, and he defines it in the story. Goyhood, which is basically the feeling of a sense of being just unmoored, and that's his interpretation of where he is in that life. And the word Goyhood came to me in that scene as what he's thinking at that moment, and then that became the name of the book. I knew right then that should be the name of the book,
It's
because
like
that is, and it also, and because it also plays on the theme of boyhood, which is a major theme of, because he and his brother are going back to boyhood,
hmm,
um, by reconnecting,
we
like who
often
they were as children. So it's kind of a double play there.
And I also felt it like he's a member of the hood,
Hmm.
of the Kensington hood, Brooklyn
Yes.
hood, and nevertheless he's still an outsider. He ends up being not a part of it. Really, this experience that he has made him outside of it. He's there, but he's not there. He's like in two
Hmm.
worlds at the same time.
Yeah.
Which of the characters do you relate to most? Which are the ones that you had the hardest to deal with?
Uh, it's funny because the two brothers who are David and Mayer, like David is this kind of hedonistic, totally material, absorbed in well, if you're gonna get, you want to get like into kind of Kabbalistic, Hasidic, thought, it's like, you talk about the animal soul and the godly soul, which to me, the two brothers represent. And they also represent a certain dichotomy within me. I've always had, a very defined, mm, I don't want to say a struggle, but a conflict, you might say, between, my animal soul and godly soul, which most people have. And so actually, really, really, the two brothers I relate to equally as being kind of offshoots of me and my personality. And
If
so,
That's good. Then I see that that's the inner struggle between two people, but really could be reflected of that
mhm.
ongoing. If this could be turned into a movie, it may well be a movie. Certainly, who do you think would play the rabbi? Who would play the
Oh my
what
goodness.
role would you play if you were in your own casting?
It's funny. It's like who would I play? It's like I mean, if I were ever fortunate to get some, like, a D-list director to like assemble a cast of, of D-list Hollywood actors in Hollywood who'd actually participate in this movie. I mean, like that's kind of where my thinking is. Like I'd be happy to get some no-name actors to put on a community theater production of this, like, versus getting a movie made. That being said, I mean, I don't know who I would have if I could have actors of my choice, but who would I play? As I say, I mean, I'd be equally comfortable playing Mayor or David because these two guys really do represent two sides of me, and two sides of everyone, really. And together, I do think that they form a single individual. If you they complete one another as those two sides of humanity, the hedonistic materialistic side and the godly side. Also, I allude a number of times, I have these little, what we call Easter eggs, little for fans for Bible fans. There's allusions all over the place having to do with, like, Cain and rather Yaakov and Esav, the two brothers. There's little allusions here and there that I tie back to the brothers as well.
I came away from my reading of the notes that it really covers an amazing amount of issues, both in the Kabbalistic world, the Jewish world, the general world, the inner conflicts. It's like life coming alive in this story about real life.
Mhm.
So we're speaking to Reuven Fenton, and you also have another side of you. Of course, you cover breaking news for the New York Post since 2007. And how long did it take you to write this book? And how did you were able to balance both writing this book and keeping your, as they say, daytime job?
It depends how philosophical you want to get about the question. The superficial answer is that basically, my job in journalism, you're able to see as little windows of time. For example, right now at noon, I'm in the Bronx. I'm going to be doing this feature on the NYPD's mounted unit, the horse, the police that ride the horses, and so that's at noon. So right now, I'm able to talk to you because I have, I see on these little windows of time that I get. It's amazing how many windows of time one has during the day that they can do things. And I've really, really come to embrace that. I don't waste much time. I really, really don't. I multitask a lot, and it's rare that I ever do anything leisurely. I spend hardly any time doing any being involved in leisure. So, and if I am involved in leisure, usually there's some constructive aspect to it involving, like let's say, my kids, or there's something that benefits somebody, outside of just simply reclining.
It's wonderful because you're reminding me the Rebbe, the Lubavitch Rebbe, often spoke about success in time. And he
Mhm.
always brought the example of the Rashba, one of the great classical commentators, who was, as you said, multitasking. He was a yeshiva dean in the yeshiva. He wrote questions and answers to people around the world. He was a doctor. He had all kinds of students, and yet he was able to find a half an hour a day to take a walk. And the question was, what was the worth of that? And how did he do that? And the answer was that whatever he was doing with full force. When he was a doctor, he was a doctor. When he was teaching, he was teaching. That's the successful time. And you said it so beautifully that if you use your time with quality, you have plenty of time, right? What do they say? If you want something done, you give it to a busy person,
Mhm.
right? And you have that ability. Now,
If I might add, you mentioned the Rebbe. I think before you mentioned the Rashba, you mentioned the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, right?
yes, yes,
And he was on my he lives up here as well. I mean, he was watching me during the writing of this, and in my imagination, the his because I'm very familiar with his attitudes about time. And I mean, talk about somebody who didn't waste a second of his life. I mean, if he lost 2 minutes, it was something that he would get upset about. Like, I can't get those 2 minutes back. And
right.
so he was very like he's actually a big huge. I mean, of my many takeaways from the Rebbe, that might be my number one in terms of emulation. I think that might be the most the influential aspect of the Rebbe on me.
Rabbi Evan Steinsaltz, the famous Rabbi Steinsaltz, he came to the Rebbe and he had two or three projects he was working on. And he asked the Rebbe, which one should he give up? Because it's taken so much time. The Rebbe said, take on a fourth project. You'll be able to keep on going. Uh,
Exactly.
we're speaking with Reuven Fenton, who is also a writer for the New York Post on breaking stories. You recently just came back from Israel, and I think your book also is somewhat of reflective of the conflicts that we have on a more international level. Can you share with us briefly some of one of the assignments and what you found recently when you went to Israel?
All right, so I'm just going to broaden the question a bit, just to describe that since the attacks of October 7th, I mean, our lives as Jews have changed here, in Israel and abroad. So a lot of what I do in New York involves anti-Semitic activism. I've covered way too many pro-Palestinian marches and rallies and bridge blockings and that horrible business at Columbia University and the other universities. And as a reporter, so when I'm covering these things, I'm in the crowd. I'm essentially marching with them, and the experience is just completely soul crushing. So I went to Israel last week, as part of it was actually a trip that was organized by the Jerusalem Press Club, and essentially, they took us to the various locations that were relevant to the situation there. So one day it was in the south, where the Nova Festival happened, where the also Kfar Aza, Kibbutz Kfar Aza, which were I think 66 some odd people, Jews were murdered and many others taken captive. So that was one aspect of the trip. Another aspect of the trip was up north, near the Lebanon border, and what the people, and actually not just Jew, but Druze and Bedouins and all the people up there who are dealing with this fear of imminent attack from Hezbollah. So, and it was just so interesting because, people in America were texting me, oh, wow, I've been reading your stuff in Israel. It must be so surreal. It must be so depressing. I'm like, no, no, no. New York is surreal. New York is depressing. Okay. Israel to me is the opposite of depression. Israel is real, with real people dealing with real issues, who aren't in some kind of cult-like activist world they're living in. uh, calling for intifada on the streets of New York City. That to me is surreal. In Israel, it's like your people who are actually facing imminent attack from Hezbollah, and preparing for that and worrying about that, and yet somehow manage to maintain that sort of distinctly Israeli can-do, upbeat attitude. Uh, that is so inspiring, and I didn't want to leave, because I said, like, this is where it is. This is where the people are. Um, and it depressed me almost to come back to New York. So, as a matter of fact, when I came back to New York, one of the first places my first assignment back was I had to go to the Manhattan Court Arraignments section, and there was like a whole big group of pro-Palestinian, activists with that black and white Palestinian keffiyeh around their neck and their hair dyed pink and just like acting like the people that they are. And I said, just get me out of here. So that's what my experience in Israel like, and really the experience at large of being a Jewish journalist, breaking news journalist at this particular time.
Um, Reuven, I want everyone to know that the book is available. It's called Goyhood. It's on Amazon. It's doing well. It was just released this past week in the beginning of May, and perhaps for those who are listening who may be interested in going into the world of writing or as a journalist, um, do you have a favorite writing snack or drink?
Well,
Or music when you're thinking, when you're writing.
sometimes I'll put on those like on YouTube, there's like these 24/7 music things where it's like a calm sort of not like a smooth jazz, but like a sort of new age sort of music that just kind of repeats itself. If you just go on YouTube and this music comes, it's instrumental music that's like helpful just to sometimes and like not only does it help me focus, but it helps block out the sound from the outside, which the places that I go to can be pretty noisy. As far as snacking, I mainly just try to eat healthy these days. So it's like I eat a lot of almonds and I drink a lot of coffee, which you
Right.
can on the usefulness of coffee.
How did you celebrate the ending of your book in a particular way? Did you make a kiddush or something? Did you get an aliyah or did you do anything special?
There's been no celebration because every step is just opens the door to like more challenges. Writing is hard, but also getting published is hard.
Hmm.
Um, Actually, if anything, when I completed the book, I became full of anxiety because I said, okay, now, great, now I have to pitch this out to literary agents and get reams and reams of rejections, which I sure enough did. Luckily, I did get one agent, and he went through the same process of pitching out to publishers, getting rejected, getting rejected, getting rejected, until he ultimately found a publisher who loved the book and wanted to publish it. But the bottom line is, there's been no celebration yet, and in a way, I think that's appropriate. I think that,
Out of
you
the so there are things I guess you would want to change in the publishing industry if you had a chance to.
yeah, but I mean, that's just my dreams. So,
What is your, for no better word, what is your kryptonite as a writer? What would you consider as a kryptonite?
well, if you're speaking about kryptonite strictly as, what, I mean, the writing process is its own kryptonite because it's not pleasurable. There was the famous writer Dorothy Parker who said, something to the effect of famously quoted, I hate writing, but I love having written. Writing is to me a tedious and somewhat torturous task involving amassing tens of thousands of words, throwing them all out because they're no good, but maybe they gave you the kernel of something good that you could turn into something better. But it is a process of basically sitting down and really forcing yourself to put out that daily allotment of words. The kryptonite is built into the writing process itself.
Mhm.
It really it's it, this idea of people who say that whenever I hear somebody say that I love writing, it's so fun. I'm like, then I'm a little skeptical if you're actually a writer
I have
because
a last question, Reuben. I appreciate you joining us here today. Uh, you graduated out of Columbia University School of Journalism. Would it
yes,
be fair to me to ask you what you feel now of the school after the recent events?
it's funny you mentioned this because I was going to say this in the beginning. I think you pointed out my having graduated there when you first started speaking. You said he graduated from Yeshiva University and then from Columbia School of Journalism, and that's in my bio. That's on the book jacket. And if I could do it over again, I would actually have seriously considered just taking the whole Columbia thing out of out of the off the jacket and just saying I'm a graduate of Yeshiva University. I'm so, because Frank, and I've done it. By the way, this isn't entirely a 180 for me. I used to be like slightly, I don't mind saying this. I used to be slightly embarrassed about saying I went to Yeshiva University because, and that all just came back to my personality and who I am, and I was, I've always been a little, very, very self-conscious about my Judaism for reasons that are too complicated to get into right now. I never wanted to broadcast my Judaism. October 7th has totally changed that. It's like I want everyone, and I never even would have considered putting Yeshiva University on a book jacket. Like that would have been something that I wouldn't really want to admit to because, again, it's just something that it's complicated why. But now on total 180, like I don't want people knowing I went to Columbia, I have any kind of Columbia degree. The school just embarrasses me, it shames me. I don't think, you know, I think if you're Jewish, choose yeshiva over Columbia.
What this book is available, ladies and gentlemen. Please go on Amazon. It's called Goyhood, Goyhood. And in conclusion, Reuven, what do you hope readers will take away from your book? What would be the lasting message you want your readers to walk away with?
Well, the lasting message, I think, is the book has a few themes and messages, but the one that I think is the biggest takeaway for me, at least, is what I was talking about earlier. Like don't cloister yourself to the extent that you're cutting off the world around you. In other words, and whether you're Jew or Gentile, don't make your emphasis strictly on personal gain. Okay. Don't make it about, how much money can I amass? Like think about what can I do? What can I do with that money towards improving people's lives? If you're a Jew, and I don't want to, it's not for me to dictate, but don't emphasize, the entirety of your life around what's called SAR, which is like basically points that will get you into a better seat in heaven. Focus on what you can do in this world towards mingling with the people around you and seeing what you can do to improve their lives, because that's really the purpose of us being here, is to participate in the world and to do our part towards perfecting the world in any way that we using the unique skills and talents that have been bestowed upon us. So, participate is really the takeaway from the book for me.
Wonderful. Make a difference in this world, making this world into a home and abode where God feels comfortable.
It's
We want to
exactly.
thank you. We want to thank Reuven Fenton for joining us, and go out there to Amazon, check out the book called Goyhood, and you'll learn so much. And of course, there's so much meaning. Thank you so much.